Hi guys, it's Bao with JohnyTechReview. Even though I've been building PC for the past decade or so for myself, my friends, and my families, I never document any of it. My last PC is about 4 years old and is slowly aging, and even though I'm still able to play games on it, rendering time on videos was taking way too long. I started working on the new build that will serve as my workstation and also my gaming rig. Welcome to my first build video. Come along with me as I will show you the process I went through in building this box. This is not only a build video, I will also give you reviews of some of the components I'm using in this rig. Before getting started, I just want to personally thank Rosewill and Gigabyte for helping me out with some of the parts in this machine. In the description below the like button, I have lists of the parts that I use and the link to where you can get them. My setup is pretty simple. It consists of a mid-tile Rosewill Gunye case. I'm using a Xeon E3 1345 V5 with 16GB of RAM. For the graphic card, I choose the Asus Strix R9 390. I'm using silicon power S60 480GB SSD. This will serve as the OS and for the program I'm using. Along with that, I also have two mechanical hard drives which I'm using for storage and archive solution. The motherboard I'm using is the Gigabyte X150M Plus WS with the Intel C232 chipset. Everything is powered by a Rosewill Arc 750 power supply. Considering the way the route is designed, modular power supply didn't really matter to me. Originally, I was going to use a Rosewill Wi-Fi card, but due to the massive graphic card, I didn't really want to install next to the GPU, hindering the fan performance, so I left that out. I also installed the Hitachi RGB light strip, which light up my case pretty well and can be seen through the windows. So after doing a lot of research and comparing graphic card between the 970 RTX and the R9 390, I decided to go with the Asus Strix R9 390 because I got a pretty good deal on it. I did have some worry about the Radeon card with almost 300 watt of power consumption at max compared to the 970 GTX at only about 180 watt max. The other concern I had was with the noise level because the room that I'm in with the PC will be the same room that I used to film. Although this might change for the future, I took the gamble right now because I wanted to be able to gaming 1440p, eventually moving to 4K, so I want the extra power and the RAM driving those pixels while gaming. So one topic kept coming up was the airflow during my build. I was struggling between the balance of positive and negative airflow, and one of my friends suggested that more intake is better, positive airflow that is. So I give that a go and turned the two top fan into an intake fan instead of outtake. For my build, this didn't help at all. It actually raised the temperature of my GPU up to 10 degrees, going from 75 degrees Celsius to 85 degrees Celsius during gaming. Other than that, the CPU temperature seemed to be the same thanks to the Evo 212 cooler that I use for most of my build lately. So in my final configuration, there was two intake fans up front, one exhaust to the back and two on the top. The power supply also has intake from the bottom and exhaust to the back, but I did not count that toward my airflow as the power supply is outputting directly to the back and not touching the rest of the case. So in my typical setup, I noticed that the stock GPU is configured to have the fan not kicking into 60 degrees Celsius, but while gaming, the GPU go to the mid 80 and sometimes even hitting the 90. I think this is one of the faults of the Asus Strix R9 390. I know the GPU can handle up to 95 degrees Celsius before thermal throttling happen, but after doing a little bit of research, I set up a custom fan curve and just keep my GPU cooler running a little bit more, and during gaming I managed to top out about 75 Celsius. So as far as the CPU, it stays chilly around the mid 50 during full load when I'm rendering video using multi-core. Again, the Hyper 212 Evo does a really good job of keeping everything cool. This cooler is quite big, it's huge, it does require a lot of cleaning in your case, but if you can fit it in your case, it's a cheap and effective cooler. Another thing I really like about this cooler is that normally the fan does not run really high. For the most part, the fan spins pretty low and only on the mid and high low that you can hear the fan ramp up. I tested the overall system airflow by removing the side panel and found that the CPU dropped by 5 degrees Celsius during gaming while the GPU remained the same. It let me know that the case didn't have perfect airflow. I believe that is due to the fact that the two front fans are not adequate enough to bring cool air into the system and some of those errors going to the power supply's route. Because I'm not using the two external 5¼ bay, I wish there's an option for a third intake fan to give it even more cool air. The bearing fan and hub control only allow low, stop or high, which means I either run the fan at really low speed or at a full 100%. At 100% it was way too loud and didn't give any significant improvement. You are probably thinking, why didn't you just use the system fan header? Well, this Xeon board happened to have only one CPU and one system fan header, which I used to plug in the CPU cooler and the rear exhaust fan. It is definitely something to consider when getting this board from Gigabyte. Gigabyte did make a larger version with more DIMM slot and more fan headers, but due to a small miscommunication, I ended up with this smaller version and went ahead with the build anyway. So while the system is idling or I'm doing some live surfing or watching videos, the rig remained pretty quiet, which was something I really wanted, as this room is not only an editing room, it's also my filming room. In some of my older videos, you will notice that my computer sometimes screams in the background as white noise when I'm filming. It is only during gaming that I notice the CPU and GPU kicking in, pushing out a massive amount of heat out of the system. It is definitely one of my favorite space heaters for the winter season. It used to take me 20 minutes to render a typical 5 to 8 minute videos that I usually post, and now that task has become 7 to 8 minutes. 4K video editing before was stuttering and slow, and now I'm able to scrub through the timeline quickly with ease. In the end, there are a few things to consider when choosing a Xeon board and a Xeon processor over a consumer board and processor. First of all, Xeon chip like the Skylake E3-1230 can have for about $250. What you get out of that is basically a quad-core hybrid thread similar to an i7 Skylake. The only difference is that the Skylake is definitely clocked a little bit higher. The Skylake also has some built-in graphics in case you are wondering about that, and some of the Xeon actually has built-in graphics too if you go to the higher model. For me, built-in graphics doesn't really matter because I'm planning to use the GPU for gaming anyway. I love these Xeon chip because they are pretty good for CPU intensive tasks such as video rendering. One very important thing I want to point out is that when using the Xeon chip, you have no overclocking whatsoever available. There is absolutely no overclocking at all on the CPU, and the RAM is stuck at 2133 and cannot be pushed any faster than that. I think it was ASRock that has one of these Xeon board that can be overclocked, but I think Intel pushed on them a little bit, so now none of the Xeon board can be overclocked. As far as this motherboard, this Gigabyte motherboard is really tiny. This is really great for micro ATX build. Another thing to consider is this motherboard is somewhat pricey. It is not a typical consumer board and doesn't have features like new BIOS. Keep this in mind as you are planning to tinker with the motherboard features, as you do not have a fallback BIOS. But on the flip side, there's not much overclocking capability, so you shouldn't be tweaking too much in the BIOS anyway. In conclusion, I found that this new build seemed to suit me pretty well. It is a balance between video editing and gaming, and playing game at 1440p at max out resolution. I'm getting really solid performance from the system. One of the games that I play the most is CSGO, and before I was getting 80 to 90 frames per second, and now I'm getting 280 frames per second consistently. It is definitely a lot smoother, and I'm able to drive my Korean monitor at 120Hz. For the most part, the system remained quiet for me, and it only gets loud during gaming, which doesn't bother me because I wear headphones anyway. Guys, that's pretty much conclude the experience of building, tweaking and using this new workstation for the past 3 weeks or so. The only thing I have left to do is really tweak the GPU and possibly reapply better thermal paste afterward to see if the temperature drop even more. If you guys enjoy this video, give it a like. If you have any question or comment for me, drop it in the comment box below. And as always guys, stay tuned for future review. Thank you.